Hello, and you are back in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. This is our 93rd episode, and today we'll be discussing that justice is supposed to be blind, more proof we live in an unhinged society, and race relations has reached peak ridiculousness. So I'm going to hop right into this. So I'm going to highlight just how broken the American justice system is with two articles. The first one being from the DMV Daily. Headline reads, prosecutors drop murder and kidnapping charges in DC carjacking case. So we had Kayla Kenesha Brown, a 22-year-old from Southeast DC, is accused of carjacking and subsequently crashing a car with a passenger inside. That has been dropped. Prosecutors cited the pending ruling from the medical examiner regarding the manner of the passenger's death as a contributing factor to this decision. However, the judge ordered Brown to remain held without bond on a charge of unarmed carjacking. The incident unfolded when Brown allegedly seized the opportunity to drive off in a Mazda SUV, leaving Leslie Maureen Gaines, 55, still inside. Gaines had been left momentarily in the vehicle by her daughter at MedStar Washington Hospital Center while her daughter retrieved a wheelchair. Brown, who was reportedly with the family at the hospital, walked away from them and took control of the vehicle. 19 minutes later, Brown attempted to make a left turn, crashed the car. Crashed the car. Oh, yeah, the building houses the office of the U.S. Attorney General for D.C. A police officer promptly apprehended Brown while Gaines was taken to the hospital and later pronounced dead. So, really, this is a major act of aggression, right, by this woman, right, who stole something, a vehicle that had a person inside of it, acted a fool, and now, this, middle-aged, well, I guess, woman who was a mother is now dead because of the actions of this one person. Now, and if the state, who has the, authority to prosecute, to be the one that says we're deciding what the consequences of your actions are for having violated the non-aggression principle in this case, right? You commit an act of theft, and that theft, while you're committing that act of theft, it leads to the death of one person, right? The state has to be the one that gets to determine what that consequence for that violation of the NAP is, and they are saying, well, we don't want to prosecute you. We don't want to hold you to account for murder and kidnapping, just stealing the car, right? Because it's going to be a lot better for this young woman, if she only has a carjacking charge on her record rather than murder, kidnapping, and carjacking, which, if there was any justice, it should. But again, DC, it's a very much a democratic stronghold, a progressive, policy-minded place. This soft on crime. This we can't, prosecute anybody that's the right complexion because there's this systemic racism and all this stuff. So I definitely think it's a very structured demolition of society that you are soft on these people who act the fool, who do these sorts of things, and the people who suffer are the regular everyday people who are just trying to live their lives, who are just trying to make it to the next day, trying to get to the next Friday, right? And it's a very unfortunate thing, but the American justice system fundamentally broken. You can either spend the rest of your life in prison or walk a free man for the same charge, depending on what jurisdiction you're charged in. And of course, if you're in jurisdictions like DC or New York, then it's going to be stuff like this, that where you should definitely be in prison for minimum 10 years, maybe the rest of your life, because someone lost their life, right? This woman, Miss Leslie Maureen Gaines, never going to live again, right? Because of the actions of this person, right? So, if she was in prison for the rest of her life, that would be some sort of meaningful retribution in this case. But that's not the case, right? But so you're going to get a carjacking charge. Hell, you could take a plea deal for it. You get like a misdemeanor or a felony that you just work off of the community service, and you never spend a day in jail or even close to prison, right? Which is where this person definitely deserves to be for choosing to do that, for taking that action. But I'm going to highlight compare this, and this was an older thing, right? You have this article from the Daily Citizen that was published back in September of 23, headline reading, elderly pro-life woman faces 11 years jail time for protests at abortion clinic, right? So the U.S. Department of Justice prosecuted 3 pro-life activists for a protest they held at an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C. These activists have now been convicted of federal crimes and are facing over a decade in federal prison. The DOJ announced on Friday, this was a long time ago, that a federal jury convicted Jonathan Darnell, Gene Marshall, and Joan Andrew Bells, each of a felony conspiracy against the FACE Act offense, and a FACE Act offense. So the FACE Act, Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, prohibits anyone from obstructing or interfering with any person obtaining or providing reproductive health services. So this happened back in 2020. This woman has, been arrested a lot of times for, going outside of abortion clinics, having these signs and saying, making this case against abortion, right? And of course, if you structure things the right way, you have the right prosecutors. Again, this is happening in D.C. This is a federal case. This is the Department of Justice. Again, this is Garland's Department of Justice that's doing this prosecution, although this started in 2020 when Trump was in office, but a lot of people who were in the federal government during the Trump administration were definitely working against him and working for this globalist depopulation agenda, right? And politics goes downstream from culture, and there is a cultural influence that the state has, right, by having stuff like the FACE Act and choosing to go really hard at it, like this woman who's in her 70s, right, who's most likely has a good chance of dying in prison. Judge doesn't care about that, right? But you have, a woman, 22, her actions takes life of another person. Decent chance she doesn't spend a day in prison, right? And she gets to live the rest of her life. And you got that, woman who in her 50s, you have a good bit of your life, but you could have, 20, 30, 40 years left to live, and that's taken away from her because of her actions, and there's going to be not nearly enough meaningful retribution. So it's just a really good dichotomy of stuff like this, right? And I do remember this happened later where I think her husband said, she might die in prison. It's like, well, she shouldn't fall doing this, right? When she wasn't really committing a meaningful act of aggression by going outside these clinics and trying to get women to not get abortions. Some of these pro-life protesters go a little bit hard. They definitely heckle. They do things that are out of line, but are they acts of aggression? No. But again, the state, at least in this country, definitely the progressive left wing, these Democrats, they don't like the fact that there are people who are against abortion, operating against abortion. They have these pregnancy centers. They want to help these women in ways that doesn't require them to get an abortion. And that's definitely not what they want. They want to not force, but they want to force the idea of antinatalism. They want people to not have kids. They want people who are committing the act that gets you pregnant or causes pregnancies to go and access abortion carte blanche. Is that the best way? Or on demand as much as possible, as much as they needed to keep those birth rates down, because then they're justified. And having immigrants are also going to be able to weaken the family unit to make it non-existent if people aren't marrying and having kids. And that's more possible because people feel like they can just engage in the physical aspects of a committed relationship with anybody they want. And then if you get in a pregnancy, then it's like, well, you just go to your local Planned Parenthood and get rid of it. And that's the mindset that people are in. And having the idea of throwing the book at this woman is saying, trying to get the pro-life movement to stop, trying to get the people who are the most passionate about dismantling the abortion industry, because it is an industry, whether you support it or not. In this country, I venture to guess, any first world country, it's an industry. There's money, people that get employed. It's an abortion industry. The people who want to acknowledge that and want to take it down, they want to make those people as scared as possible, not act, not do these sorts of things, and thereby influence the culture to be more pro-abortion. And this is why this is happening. It's very clearly a political bias. There's a whole game at play And it's frankly disgusting. But again, comparing these two cases to me is very clearly showing just how broken the American justice system is, especially in a place like Washington, D.C., and especially with these federal prosecutors during, this administration. And again, like I said before, a lot of people who are working in the federal government, even, regardless of who the president is, even if it's going to be the guy that you like, they have an agenda. It's bad for Americans, and they're going to do whatever they can to enact it. Lawfare. That's what it is. But we're moving on to the next topic, and this one is really tragic. So there's a GoFundMe in the link. I chipped in $5 to this. I feel like I had to because I'm talking about this. But you have this 3-year-old boy in Ohio, Julian Wood, tragically murdered, right? And his GoFundMe, $264,000. I'm looking at this Thursday evening in New York, out of a $10,000 goal. So financially, the family's going to be okay. They'll be able to pay for, medical bills because the mother and this child were stabbed in a grocery store parking lot. The mother survived, but the child succumbed to his wounds, very unfortunately. And this was another failure of the justice system and also the medical system, because this was a mentally ill woman. She was known to be mentally ill. She had past records for theft. Instead of, being in either state custody or under, medical supervision to make sure she has proper antipsychotic medicine so she's not going around stabbing people randomly, they just let her go. And she goes on this insane bender, and now there's a 3-year-old boy who lost his life. A whole life is gone, right? At the very beginning of this, a lot of lost human potential. I talked about this a long time ago, the concept of human potential. A lot of lost human potential. This is why it's so sad. And of course, you've got a family that's absolutely devastated. You don't want to lose a 3-year-old kid. You don't want to have a funeral for a 3-year-old, especially with these circumstances. So, and the reason why stuff like this happens, so again, the woman who did this, I forget, let's see if I can find her name on the GoFundMe. I don't think I can, but I'll have a link to the GoFundMe description below. It doesn't really matter, but this was a black woman. The kid and the mother were white, so people are going to have this racial aspect to it. And I think of course racial relations are really bad. We'll get into this. So I don't think I wouldn't go beyond. I wouldn't go and say it's not a contributing factor, but what's more of the fact is the fact that we don't have very solid community, right? The mother of the perpetrator of this case said that the medical community, the medical system and the legal system, or I think medical system, say that for sure, failed her, right? Because she had a past record, she wasn't on the right medication, and they let her go without any supervision, and she goes out and does something like this, and now, of course she's, there's this video of her, smiling, and not, being very nonchalant about, this whole experience. And again, this is not someone who is of sound mind. This isn't someone who's around a community of people that cares about her. Again, these bigger urban and suburban areas, they're not tight-knit. People don't know each other, so people feel more emboldened to do stuff like this. And of course, we can get into the food supply and all the chemicals in the drinking supply, and the potable water supply. Whether it's water you drink and bathe in, and that gets into your skin. You got all these heavy metals, you got the fluoride, you got the atrazine, you've got all the pollutants from heavy industry. That's what the East Palestinians in Ohio with that train derailment deal with, stuff like vinyl chloride. All these chemicals are used in manufacturing, all these microplastics, all these sorts of things that affect people at a physiological level, and then therefore mentally as well. And then of course you've got stuff like the internet, I've talked about before, warping people's minds as well. So there's a lot of stuff at play here as to why people are more prone to these psychotic episodes and doing things like that. And also just because you're more prone to engaging in these psychotic episodes, these extreme violent delusions, the community of people that you're in are people that you don't care about. So you feel even more emboldened to do this because this woman didn't know with Margot and Julian. So she felt like she was, no, not justified, but she felt okay to go ahead and do that if there were people that she knew and she was genuinely insane. Then that would be more encouraged. And of course, if it was a more tight-knit community, like, you have these medical staff, they knew who she was, if they were connected to the family, instead of just being, serving, doing a job for a big, for a big conglomerate medical corporation, a hospital, because most of these hospitals are owned by big companies. It's all faceless, it's all soulless. You're just doing it to get money. I'm not saying that every nurse, doesn't care about their job to some aspect, right? But a lot of it is just to get, money in the bank. And, there isn't anything inherently wrong with that, but there's this transactional nature of what you're doing, and it's made, things worse. And again, in this situation where it's just like, well, give her a prescription, and if those pills don't work, then she can come back for more. And of course, if you're, deranged, if you're psychotic, you're not going to go back and try and get your meds right. You're just going to go out and do stuff like this. And this is the issue that I have with pinning it on any one thing, right? There's a lot of things at play, and I think the biggest thing is the fact that we've really abandoned the idea of these decentralized, tight-knit communities. What this country, the United States of America, was supposed to be. A series of small, decentralized farming communities that were working together to protect the each other, right? You just had, these farming towns that were decentralized, had their own local militias, and were responsible for protecting each other. It could come together if there were any foreign threats that deemed that to be necessary. But otherwise, most people would just be keeping to themselves. These communities would be keeping to themselves. They would be self-sufficient, self-reliant, but we're really far removed from that. These big urban sprawls, these suburban areas that are very spread out but still have a lot of people in them, so no one cares about each other. Everything's very transactional. People are being driven insane, and there's no good way to take care of that in a way that's going to be meaningful or helpful for a lot of people, especially if you're lower income, especially if you're completely dependent on benefits from the state. So a lot of this is, again, very intentional, to destroy the Great Society, to make the people who can fight back against this globalist agenda, against what the WEF, the UN, the WHO all want to inflict on the society, to just roll over and give up. And it's because of just how bleak things are in a lot of ways, and it's, not just these things. So this is really my take on it. Again, the GoFundMe will be in the description below. Don't have to donate. It has $264,000, so financially you're going to be fine. But, there's a lot of things that money can do for you, but money isn't going to bring this kid back. Money isn't going to take away the trauma that's been inflicted onto this family, very unfortunately. So, there's only do so much. But at the very least, they are going to be financially set back from having to deal with, the funeral expenses, the medical bills from this. So that's the one reassuring thing from this. But we're going to move on to the last topic. And again, this is my series of saying everything's a psyop, right? I'm not a fan of this particular psyop. And what's a psyop? So I'm sure you've seen this, or, if you're around the internet, I saw this on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, of this young white woman drops an N-bomb. Everyone loses their minds, and she triples down on it. She's like tripling down on it. She's on Twitter now, she's on TikTok, really making the rounds of it. So she says, drops an N-bomb, no hard R, people losing their minds, saying, oh, white people, are feeling too emboldened, yada yada. You've got the people who are very much identitarians, who very much love the race hustling aspects of this, are just completely sold out to the idea that if a white person says that word, and I'm not going to create the sound clip of me saying it because I don't feel confident to be uncancelable just yet, and I don't have the feds telling me to do anything. I doubt that this is an organic thing because it happens so quickly. It's happening during an election year, so I'm very skeptical of this. But the whole idea, and I also just think it's really cringy. Again, this is a very unproductive thing for her to do. But again, drops his word, got fired from her job the next day. Very predictable. Everyone's gotten in a tizzy about it, or a lot of people have. Again, it's just indicative that if you can say one word, right, and you lose your mind over it, and you think this is like grandiose act of racism that's making everything worse, that means that like you're not being respected or anything like that. All these things that people think when this word comes about and it's used by the wrong demographic. When I've had in my life people in that demographic use it around black people, and everything's fine because people know each other, right? And this is another issue that I was getting into, is that there's no sense of community. And if you're in a tight-knit community, you're friends with people. It doesn't matter what words you say, because you understand that the context behind those words aren't the meaning. The meaning behind that isn't to degrade or harass or belittle. It's being used as a way to maintain and build rapport. But that's not really a thing that's happening on Twitter. And again, I very much think this was a planted thing. It's a very much an artificial thing, and I don't think she's going to get too far. I think a lot of people are seeing this for what this is, even if they aren't explicit in calling it a psyop. A lot of people are. A lot of people see this as fake. A lot of people see this as not fake in the sense that you've got like someone from the FBI telling her to do this, even though I definitely think I wouldn't put it above her being a flower, I don't know, a flower child, but like a pet of the Fed, of the FBI, whatever free letter organization, being completely planted, this being a whole fabricated thing. Like, it's an election year, want people as polarized as possible to keep, especially considering that the black demographic in this country is the strongest base of Democrat voters. If they can be completely convinced that racism is this evil boogeyman that exists, and if it's going to come back even stronger if Donald Trump even gets an inch within the White House, then they're going to be more likely to vote Democrat, and I do think that's part of that plan. So I definitely think this is very much a psyop. This is something that the feds are, if they're not outright doing it, they're definitely encouraging it to be more of a thing, because it's getting a lot of play on social media. It just happened so quickly that she got fired from her job. But I think a lot of people see this as a very much a fake, fabricated persona, whether or not they think it's a psyop by the feds. I don't think everyone thinks that, but I do think a lot of people are going to say she's a grifter, she's doing it just for clout, she's doing it just to get those those simp bucks or whatever. So I definitely think people aren't going to be buying what she's selling, which very much a good thing. And I definitely encourage you all to not do that, because it's not really productive what she did. She didn't really make anything better. Again, not all the points she made were bad or worthless, but it's just not something that I'd really encouraged to be a culturally building moment. Is more or less just, like I said, a psyop to increase the polarization and to degrade the race relations during an election year, so that way the people who vote Democrat will be more encouraged to vote Democrat. But those are my thoughts. You could say my tinfoil hats point in the wrong direction, getting the wrong signals, or I sniffed too many chemtrails, whatever you want to say. But I think I will leave it there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Reminder, I am going to be at Pork Fest all week. Saturday afternoon, the 15th, I will be arriving. Be there all week. I'll be selling copies of Machine to Man. So you can buy those from me. You can talk to me if you're so inclined. So if you're at Pork Fest, Lancaster, New Hampshire, I'll be there all week. You can meet up with me. That's really it. Hopefully you guys enjoy this one, and Joker is out. Thank you for being in the Velvet Room with Joker the Fool. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, whether you're listening on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, or Substack. And be sure to subscribe to my Substack, velvetroompublishing.substack.com, to keep up with Machine to Man and all my other projects.